Tell me honestly, can one small idea change the whole world? We haven't answered it yet. But this question was the spark that started the Tesla story. Imagine, the early 2000s. The world is suffocating from exhaust fumes. The noise of engines sounds like an endless roar, and the streets are dominated by huge gasoline monsters. And in the midst of this chaos, a group of people appears who did not agree with the rules of the game. They sat in a small office, where instead of noisy factory machines there was only the creak of old chairs, the smell of cheap coffee, and stacks of drawings drawn with pencil on yellowed paper. They dreamed of something that no one believed in, an electric car that would not be a strange toy for environmentalists, but a real car of the future. There was almost no money, no support. The auto industry laughed at them. It's impossible. It's useless. People will never switch from gasoline to electric, was the saying everywhere. And yet they started. They didn't wait for the world to change. They decided to change it themselves. Imagine this scene. Night, a single lamp shining in a dark office, a board of batteries and motors, and in the air, the feeling that they are playing a game where the future of the planet is at stake. And that is when the first prototype is born, the Tesla Roadster. Still raw, still fragile, but it comes to life. The wheels turn without a drop of gasoline, and this silent movement becomes a louder statement than 1,000 speeches. But along with the dream comes fear. Will the strength be enough? Will they be the first to break? Can the idea stand up to the giants? This was just the beginning of a journey where every step seemed on the edge of the possible. And yet they moved forward. Because they believed. Because they knew. If a small spark can pierce the darkness, then perhaps one small idea can truly change the world. Imagine, you dream of changing the world. You start your first car, you put your heart into it, and then it hits the road. And after a few kilometers thus began Tesla's first real trials. The Roadster was a beautiful symbol, but in practice it broke down, was too expensive, and the company was spending millions it simply didn't have. Investors were pressuring, competitors were laughing, and bank accounts were melting faster than the charge in the batteries. It was the summer of 2008. The global financial crisis was stopping businesses one after another. Tesla was on the brink. Imagine this moment. The factory is humming, but the workers don't know if they will get paid. Engineers are staying up all night in the workshops to save the machines from further breakdowns. And the owner of the company, Elon Musk, looks at the empty accounts and understands. Either he risks everything he has, or Tesla will cease to exist. Then he took a step that most would call crazy. He invested his last money in the company. Not millions, everything. His savings, even those that were supposed to provide for his family. Imagine the pressure. At stake, not only the business, but also his personal life, reputation, a dream that no one believed in anymore. And at a time when it seemed that the doors were about to close forever, a small miracle happened. The first real orders came in. A few people who said, "We want this electric car. We are ready to pay in advance because we believe in your future." It was tiny money compared to the debts, but it gave the most important thing, a chance to survive. Every day was like a battle. Every car that left the shop was a hope. And every time it broke down, it was like a stab in the heart. But it was in these moments that Tesla hardened. She understood, crisis is not just an enemy. Crisis is a teacher. And the first lesson was simple. If you want to survive, you have to stand to the end. Even when you're left alone. Even when everyone laughs. It was this lesson that allowed Tesla to take the next step. And it will be historic. In the world of business, sometimes it's the smallest victories that give the greatest power. For Tesla, those victories were every Roadster that hit the road and didn't stop after a few minutes. Yes, it was an expensive sports car that only a few could afford. Yes, the company sold only a few hundred cars, which was a drop in the ocean for the industry. But each of those drops glowed like a spark capable of igniting a fire. Imagine, a sunny day in California. A Tesla Roadster is parked on a quiet street. Red, shiny, with a quiet electric motor that sounds completely different from the roar of gasoline monsters. Passers-by stop, look, take pictures. The driver presses the pedal, and the car instantly rushes forward, without a single rumble. It looked like magic. It was something completely new. And suddenly, society began to listen. Newspapers wrote articles about crazy inventors who had managed to make an electric car that looked like a sports car from the future. Auto reviewers, who had scoffed yesterday, now cautiously admitted that this project made sense. People began to argue on forums, in bars, even at family dinners. What if the future really is electric? Of course, it wasn't a breakthrough. Sales were tiny, there were enough problems. But those first 100 cars had the power of a symbol. They showed that it was possible. And it was the symbol that started to change everything. The atmosphere at Tesla's internal meetings has also changed. If before they were meetings of people who were constantly thinking about survival, now there is a different energy. Imagine a small conference room, simple chairs, a board with marker notes. The engineers are tired, with circles under their eyes, but they are smiling. Because for the first time they see the result. Their cars are not just standing in the garage, but driving on the roads. They are noticed. They are wanted. And this gave faith, which was more important than any investment. But it was still clear, the Roadster would not save the company. It was too expensive, too complicated to manufacture. Only a few could buy it. To change the world, Tesla had to create something more. Something that would become not a luxury, but a dream for thousands, and then millions. Elon Musk understood this well. At one of those meetings, he said a simple but powerful phrase. If we want to truly move the industry, we have to prove that an electric car can be the best car in the world. Not just an alternative, but the best choice. It seemed like madness. How could a small startup challenge the giants? Mercedes, BMW, Toyota? But it was then that Tesla began work on what would later change everything. The Model S. The first steps forward always seem small, but they are the ones that determine the direction of the road. For Tesla, the Roadster was proof. Electric cars are not doomed. They can be fast, beautiful, exciting. It was the beginning of a new vision, a new horizon. Imagine this moment. A Roadster stands in a dark garage, surrounded by engineers. They look at it like a child who has taken its first step. And although this step is still shaky, still uncertain, it has everything: hope, faith, strength. And most importantly, it leads further, further, to where a small spark will turn into a fire. And this fire will be able to illuminate the whole world. There are moments when history changes course. Not gradually, not step by step, but suddenly, with one explosion. For Tesla, that moment was the appearance of the Model S. After the Roadster, the company already had a reputation for being exotic for the rich. But that wasn't enough. To truly change the world, Tesla had to show something completely different. They dreamed of creating a car that would prove that an electric car is not a compromise, not a strange alternative, but a future that is better in everything. Without sacrifices, without buts. Imagine the atmosphere of those days. A small office in Silicon Valley, piles of old batteries against the walls, models of car bodies on the tables, printouts with drawings. Engineers argue at night. How to make the battery more durable, how to reduce weight, how to give the car a look that will make people forget about gasoline forever. The air smells of coffee and constant fatigue. But above all, there is a feeling. We are doing something that will change the planet. And then the day of the presentation came. 2012. The hall was full of journalists, critics, skeptics. No one knew what to expect. Many thought, now they will show another strange toy that will never go into mass production. The lights go out. A black sedan with sleek lines, as if from the future, drives onto the stage. Silence. And suddenly the hall explodes with applause. This is not just any electric car. This is a Model S. It looked as elegant as a Mercedes. It drove faster than a Porsche. And it had a range that no one thought possible. In the center of the cabin was a huge screen instead of dozens of buttons, a minimalism that seemed fantastic at the time. It wasn't just a car. It was a revolution on wheels. Skeptics who had laughed yesterday fell silent. Journalists wrote articles with headlines like, "The future is here." And automotive experts, accustomed to criticizing newcomers, named the Model S the best car of the year. Not an electric car, but a car. But the main thing was different. People who got behind the wheel of the Model S felt something special. Silence instead of the roar of the engine. Instant acceleration instead of delays. And the knowledge that not a single drop of gasoline was burned during the trip. It was an experience that changed the way of thinking. Of course, the problems didn't go away. Production was difficult, the costs were huge. The company was once again teetering on the edge. But now it had more than just a product. It had faith. The Model S showed that the impossible was possible. At a team meeting, Elon Musk said a phrase that went down in history. "We don't just build cars. We build the future we want to live in." This phrase became a mantra for all of Tesla. It meant that every battery, every bolt, every day of struggle for survival, it's not about business, it's about mission. And the world began to listen. Politicians started talking about green transportation. Investors who had shunned Tesla yesterday were now the first to call. People were lining up to order a car that wasn't even fully operational yet. Imagine the contrast, from a small office with a lamp and stacks of drawings to a presentation where the whole world froze in delight. This was not just a transformation of a company. This was a transformation of an idea that stopped being a dream of a few and became a reality for thousands. And yet, this was just the beginning. Because a real storm was waiting ahead. The gasoline empire was not going to give up without a fight. And Tesla was preparing to take a step that would put it on the world map forever. The Model S showed the world that an electric car could be not only a reality, but also a dream. But Elon Musk understood that the real breakthrough would come not when Tesla became a car for the rich, but when it became affordable for millions. He already had an idea in his head that sounded as crazy as the first Roadster, to create a people's electric car. This project was called the Model 3, a simple sedan, affordable, but with all the magic of Tesla. It was supposed to be a car that would change not only the industry, but also the very idea of mass transportation. But to realize this dream, something more was needed than a few factories. It was needed a factory of the future. Imagine the Nevada desert. The sun is scorching, the wind is driving dust across the bare steppe. And here, in this place where it seemed there was nothing, a giant begins to grow. Mountains of concrete, cranes, thousands of workers. It was the Gigafactory, the largest battery factory in the world. The huge building was so large that it could be seen even from space. Inside, the atmosphere was almost fantastical. Conveyor belts that looked like something out of science fiction, robotic arms, battery modules that connected in an endless flow of energy. The Gigafactory became a symbol that Tesla was no longer a small startup. It had become a force to be reckoned with around the world. And then came the moment of the Model 3 launch. It wasn't just a car release, it was a historic day. All over America, and then in Europe, people spent the night outside Tesla showrooms to place orders. The lines were reminiscent of the iPhone premieres, but now it was not about the phone, but about the car. Imagine this contrast. People standing in tents, drinking coffee from thermoses, laughing and discussing the future. They weren't waiting for entertainment. They were waiting for access to a new world. On the first day, Tesla received over 100,000 orders. Within a few weeks, over 500,000. It was a signal. People were ready. They didn't just want an electric car. They wanted a Tesla. But behind this explosion of excitement were also incredible difficulties. Model 3 production turned out to be much more difficult than planned. Factories were working at their limits. Robots broke down, suppliers missed deadlines, and the company was once again on the edge. Musk even called this period production. Imagine the scene. Late at night, a factory, the hum of machines, and Musk himself sleeping not at home, but right on the floor of the workshop. He lived there for weeks, checking every line, every process. Many thought it was madness, but it was this obsession that gave results. Production was finally set up. Model 3 began to roll off the assembly line by the hundreds, then by the thousands. And now came the moment when Tesla went from being an exotic for the rich to a true mass force. People with average incomes could get behind the wheel of an electric car that looked, drove, and felt like a car from the future. This became a signal for the world. The era of gasoline is no longer immortal. On the streets of New York, London, Berlin, you could increasingly hear not the roar of engines, but the quiet whistling of Tesla. Countries began to talk about completely abandoning gasoline cars in the future. And every time imagine the contrast. A desert where there was once only wind and dust has now become the heart of a new energy revolution. People who were skeptical yesterday are now queuing up to get their car of the future. It was a true global breakthrough. And it made Tesla not just a company. It made it a symbol. But with success always come new challenges. Because when you reach the top, the whole world is waiting to see if you'll stay there or fall. Standing on top sounds beautiful, but the truth is that the top is never a quiet place. The wind is always stronger, the pressure is greater, and every step is watched by millions. Tesla entered this new phase as a symbol of a dream, but with recognition came challenges that forced us to prove once again that we are not random guests at this height. Competition grew with each passing month. Companies that had only yesterday laughed at the idea of mass-produced electric cars were now investing billions to follow our path. Volkswagen, Ford, Toyota, Chinese manufacturers, all began to build their own batteries, their own platforms, their own ambitions. It was no longer a one-player game. We understood. Either we would stay ahead, or we would become just the first chapter in a book that others would rewrite. But the biggest challenges always come from within, not from without. Tesla became a global giant, and with scale came new problems: worker strikes, factory safety issues, working conditions scandals. The press looked for every crack, every flaw, to question whether we deserved to be so high. Add to that Elon Musk's sharp tweets that could send stocks crashing in a matter of minutes. And you can see why this period is called a test of strength. Regulators were not left out either. The autopilot that we presented to the world as the future of safe roads became the subject of investigations after accidents. Each incident was hyped as if it was the end of the whole idea. And once again we were faced with the question: is the world ready for technologies that are ahead of its fears? But perhaps the biggest challenge was keeping the faith. Because when you're surrounded by doubt, scandal, and competition, it's easy to forget why you started in the first place. We had to remind ourselves and the world: Tesla doesn't exist to just make cars. It exists to change the very essence of transportation, of energy, of the way we live. This is more than a business. This is a mission. And yet, even in our darkest moments, we continued to amaze. Gigafactories sprang up around the world. The Model 3 became the best-selling electric car on the planet. We proved that electricity could overtake gasoline in speed, in style, in popularity. Yes, every peak brought new storms. But every storm made us stronger. Because the real question has always been: can we not only rise, but also stay at the top when everyone is watching us? And Tesla answers it every day, not with words, but with actions. With cars rolling off the assembly line, with innovations that move the industry forward, and with faith that doesn't fade, even when it seems like the wind will blow you down. That's why Tesla's current challenges aren't the end of the story. They're just a new beginning. And there will be more to come: bigger battles, bigger victories, and perhaps bigger scandals. But that's how it should be, because that's how a legend is born.